The Ferris wheel groaned against the midnight sky, its rusted joints singing a song that made Dakota's teeth ache. They stood backstage at the Celestial Circuit's latest stop, a town that didn't exist on any map, accessible only because the stars had aligned in ways the calendar couldn't explain. Their heart hammered against their ribs as the crowd roared, 20,000 voices swallowed by the October darkness. The adrenaline was already building, that familiar electric tingle spreading through their fingertips. In 30 seconds, they would know if the motorcycle ramp was going to collapse. Dakota had been disgraced once. 6 years ago, a botched stunt in Vegas had left 3 people injured, and Dakota's name dragged through every industry publication as reckless, ego-driven, a liability. They'd spent 2 years eating humble pie, working construction, wondering if they'd ever feel that rush again. Then they'd stumbled onto the Celestial Circuit by accident, or maybe by design. Time worked differently here. The oldest performers, the ones who'd been traveling for decades, barely aged. Nobody asked questions. The circuit moved on lunar schedules, appearing in towns that only became real during specific astronomical alignments. It was seductive in its isolation, like being outside the world entirely. And then, during their first performance, the adrenaline had spiked, and for exactly 30 seconds, Dakota had seen the future. They'd seen the rope snap. They'd seen the acrobat fall. They'd seen the exact moment the safety net would fail if they didn't call for a halt. They'd stopped the show. They'd saved a life. And they'd done it 30 more times since then, becoming something like a legend. The performer who could predict danger, who had an uncanny sense of timing that made their acts not just thrilling, but genuinely, impossibly safe. Their reputation had been quietly rebuilt. Not in the old industry, that world had moved on, written them off. But here, on the Celestial Circuit, among the timeless wanderers and the people who understood that some abilities couldn't be explained by normal physics, Dakota was becoming someone again, someone good, until Sienna had shown up 3 weeks ago. "You look nervous," a voice called from the shadows. Dakota's spine went rigid. They'd recognized that voice in a hurricane. Sienna Cross emerged from the darkness like she'd been waiting for them specifically, which Dakota was beginning to suspect she had been. She looked exactly the same as she had 10 years ago. Same sharp cheekbones, same calculating eyes, same smile that never quite reached those eyes. "Worried your little magic trick won't work tonight?" Sienna. Dakota didn't turn around. They kept their eyes on the stage, on the ramp that was still being checked by the crew. "Thought you were dead. There was a story, a performance accident in Prague. Story's what you believe when you're not looking too hard." Sienna stepped closer, and Dakota felt the temperature drop. "I've been alive, traveling, waiting, watching what you've been doing here, Dakota. Very impressive, very convenient. A disgraced stunt performer who suddenly has supernatural vision. Must be nice. Must make you feel clean again." Dakota finally turned to face her. Sienna had been their rival before the disgrace, before everything fell apart. They'd both been competing for the same contract in Vegas, the same recognition, the same place at the top of the industry. Sienna had always been faster, sharper, willing to take risks that terrified even Dakota. And then Sienna had disappeared, and Dakota had thought they'd never see her again. "What do you want?" Dakota asked quietly. "The truth," Sienna said. "Or more accurately, I want everyone else to see what I've figured out. Your visions aren't real, Dakota. You're a fraud. A lucky fraud, maybe, but a fraud. I'm going to prove it." Before Dakota could respond, Sienna turned and melted back into the darkness. The crew called that the stunt was ready. Dakota's heart was still pounding as they made their way to the staging area, as they climbed onto the motorcycle, as they felt the weight of 20,000 eyes landing on them like heat. This was the moment. This was always the moment. That split second before the adrenaline spike when everything was possible and impossible at once. The motorcycle roared to life. Dakota accelerated toward the ramp, and as the wheels left the ground, as their body became momentarily weightless against the vast carnival night, the adrenaline surged, and the world split open. They saw 30 seconds ahead, and they saw Sienna standing at the edge of the crowd, her hands raised, her fingers making subtle movements, like she was conducting an invisible orchestra. The motorcycle's trajectory began to shift. The ramp trembled. The landing platform tilted. But it was happening in slow motion, happening in that strange 30-second space where Dakota's vision allowed them to perceive probability itself. Sienna was manipulating it. That was the only explanation. While Dakota could see the future, Sienna could change it, could twist probability like string, could make impossible things happen. Dakota had seconds. They adjusted their weight, compensated for the shifting ramp, and landed perfectly as the platform righted itself the moment their tires touched down. The crowd erupted. The vision faded back into normal time. But Dakota understood now. Sienna hadn't come to expose them as a fraud. She'd come to sabotage them. And she'd been doing it for 3 weeks, which meant 3 weeks of performances where Dakota had unconsciously been compensating for her manipulations, getting better at reading danger because the danger had been specifically designed by someone who understood exactly how to hurt them. Over the next week, as the circuit moved to another impossible town, another alignment of stars that made geography meaningless, Sienna's sabotage became more aggressive. During a wire walk, Dakota saw the cables being loosened mid-performance, but not by crew, by probability itself warping under Sienna's control. During a fire stunt, the flames shifted toward Dakota's body in ways that should have been impossible, entropy itself betraying them. And each time, Dakota's visions let them compensate, let them survive, let them emerge as an even more incredible performer. The crowd loved it. The danger was real in a way it had never been before. And Dakota was becoming transcendent, a figure who seemed to dance with death and win every time. But something was wrong. On the 7th night, during a performance involving the Ferris wheel, the oldest structure on the circuit, the one the oldest members whispered about in ways that made it clear it meant something more than just a ride, Dakota saw something that terrified them. The vision came in layers. First, they saw Sienna's probability manipulations, the familiar twisting of chance that had become their new normal. But beneath that, they saw something else, something larger. The Ferris wheel itself began to warp, and not metaphorically. It started to age rapidly, to decay, to become something other than metal and rust. And when Dakota looked closer, when they pushed their vision past the 30 seconds to try to understand what was happening, they felt something in their chest tear. Sienna felt it too. Dakota knew because she suddenly appeared on the midway, and for the first time, she looked afraid. "You see it?" Sienna said, not as an enemy now, but as someone who'd been carrying a burden alone and couldn't anymore. "When we're both here, when our abilities interact, yours to see forward, mine to bend probability, we open a door. The circuit isn't outside time because of magic, Dakota. It's outside time because something is holding it there, and it's waking up. Dakota's vision spiked again, and this time they saw much further ahead. They saw the circuit unraveling. They saw the towns that didn't exist beginning to exist, beginning to materialize in real places, real time, with hundreds of performers and performers who'd been traveling for decades, suddenly catching up with the years they should have aged. They saw chaos and catastrophe spreading outward like a crack in glass. "How do we stop it?" Dakota asked. "I don't know," Sienna said quietly, "but I think we have to stop performing. I think we have to stop using our abilities. I think—" She paused, looking at Dakota with something like genuine emotion for the first time. "I think we have to leave the circuit." But leaving felt like dying. Dakota had lived nowhere else for 6 years. The circuit had saved them. The timelessness had healed them. The danger had made them whole again. Asking Dakota to walk away from it was asking them to die. They looked at Sienna, then at the Ferris wheel behind her, at the way reality seemed to shimmer around its edges, at the way the carnival lights looked suddenly fragile, like they might blink out at any moment. "Not yet," Dakota said. "First, I'm going to look ahead, really ahead. I'm going to find out what's actually happening here and how we fix it without killing everyone on this circuit." Dakota walked toward the motorcycle, toward the ramp, toward the performance that was waiting. The adrenaline was already building, electric and dangerous and seductive in its promise of answers. Behind them, Sienna called out something, but Dakota couldn't hear it over the roar of the crowd, over the mechanical symphony of the carnival, over the sound of their own heartbeat drumming like a countdown clock. The motorcycle roared to life. Dakota accelerated. The world split open, and this time, Dakota dove deeper into the vision than they ever had before, pushing past the 30 seconds, demanding to see what lay beyond. And what they saw made them understand that the real danger had never been on the circuit at all. It had been waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to look.